But to make it up to you folks, we're going to take it to the distillery and the winery. They both have free tours and tastings. Now, folks, please, I'll also ask you to silence your cell phones. Use them only as cameras. Now, about 50 years before St. Augustine was settled, Don Juan Ponce de Leon came to Florida. He was the first mate of Christopher Columbus. He was also the very first governor of the island of Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico. He heard rumors that there was a fountain that could grant eternal youth. It was on the island of Bimini. So he set sail to Bimini, but he ended up on the coast of Florida. When he landed there, he didn't actually discover Florida. There was already about 100,000 natives here. They were the ancient Seminole Indians. They date back to 3000 BC. Ponce de Leon landed in Florida in 1513. It was Easter Sunday. At that time of year, Florida is very lush and green. So he decided to name us after the Easter season in Spain, which is Pascua de Flores. He named us La Florida, the flower. Now, in the years after Ponce's landing, Spain tried desperately to create a sustainable colony in Florida. They were not successful, but their arch rivals, the French, were. They created a colony in 1564 in Port Caroline, Florida, part of present-day Jacksonville. When the King of Spain heard this, he was furious. He thought Florida belonged to Spain, so he dispatched his very best admiral, Pedro Menendez de Alvarez, with troops and colonists, and 3 commands. Get rid of the French, convert the natives to Catholic, and create a sustainable colony in Florida. They landed on September 8th of 1565, right at the site of the giant cross on your left-hand side. Our cross is 208 feet tall and 7 tons of stainless steel. Now, once the Menendez party got settled, Pedro Menendez took his troops up to Port Caroline to get rid of the French. When they got there, Port Caroline was very lightly guarded. They took the fort with only a minor skirmish. But what they didn't know is the French had put all of their troops into their ships. They were headed south to get rid of the Spanish. But it was September of the year. That's the height of hurricane season in Florida. The French fleet was destroyed by a hurricane. Only about 250 of them survived. They crawled to shore just south of St. Augustine. Now, when Menendez and his troops got back from Port Caroline, he ordered his troops to gather up all the survivors, asked them one very important question: are you Catholic? They were French Huguenots, but they were Protestants, and they said no. Many of them refused to convert to Catholic, and Menendez finally realized that he didn't have enough supplies for an additional 250 mouths. So he ordered his troops to take all the survivors out behind the dunes, put them to the sword, and throw their bodies in the bay. Rumor has it the bay ran red for 3 days. They changed the name of the bay from the Bay of Dancing Dolphins to Matanzas Bay. Matanzas in Spanish means killing, place, or slaughter. Well, it took the Protestants about 22 years to get their revenge. So France is great, and about 2,000 privateers, a very nice name from legal pirates, came to St. Augustine. Now, they burned the settlements of the town, chased everybody out into the swamps and the wilderness. But then, in 1668, the dreaded pirate Robert Searle came to town. He killed 60 of our residents. He burned down a portion of our city. He also burned down our 9th wooden fort. Queen Mariana of Spain was in power at that time. She decided there'll be no more wooden forts in St. Augustine, and she commanded the construction of a stone fort. That fort is called the Castillo de San Marcos. That is the fort coming up on your left-hand side. Now, shortly after we built our fort, we walled in our city, making us the first sitio. The wall in front of us was called the Cubo Line. It was our northern line of defense made out of palm logs. It ran from the fort about a half a mile to my right to the San Sebastian River. At the intersection coming up was an additional line. It was called the Rosario Line. It was an earthen berm line, but it was our western line of defense. It went from this point to my left about 9 blocks to the water. At that point, St. Augustine was completely surrounded by either water or defensive walls. We were in very good shape. But mixed in amongst our defensive walls, we also had what they called readouts. Those were additional fortifications or outposts. Our Santo Domingo redoubt is coming up on your right-hand side. This is a replica built by the city of St. Augustine. The building in front of us is our 1910 Orange Street School. Today it's the administrative offices for the school district. But when they were first putting this building up, they decided to add 2 towers to the front of it. Those were the chemistry labs. They did that just in case something went wrong. It would damage the main portion of the building. Now, the teachers in his building were paid an enormous salary. They made $20 a month. The building on your right-hand side, this is our public parking facility. That's not as historic the site is. This was the site of Florida's very first Grand Hotel, the San Marco. Built in 1885 by Isaac Crufts, a businessman out of Boston. It was a 5-story wooden structure. It was 260 feet long. It had 3 main towers. The center tower was a 131 feet tall, or 131 feet tall. But the San Marco also had a couple of firsts in its day. It had steam heat, yes folks. Northeast Florida gets quite chilly in the winter time. And if you didn't feel like climbing all the way up to the 5th floor, you could hop on an Otis elevator. Now in 1885, Henry Flagler came to town on his second honeymoon. He stayed in the San Marco. Back then, he was partners with John D. Rockefeller and Standard Oil. They were the 2 wealthiest men in the entire world. But Henry Flagler needed something else to do. He decided to build a resort hotel in St. Augustine, but he had a problem. The railroad ended in Jacksonville, Florida. He needed to get his wealthy friends from the north to come down and stay at his hotel. So he extended the railroad from Jacksonville to St. Augustine. Later on in his lifetime, he extended the railroad eastward to Ormond Beach, West Palm Beach, and Miami. And in 1912, 1 year before his death, all the way down to Key West, Florida. Please remain seated until the driver comes to a complete stop. Exiting backwards a ladder style, holding the handles in upright. I'll wait for my bell. This is stop number 2, the Visitors Information Center. Exit only 2 to your left. We have an active traffic lane on our right. Hey, just a couple off and away safely. Here we go, folks. Please keep all person on his body Boston South Trolley at all times. Now, coming up in front of us, you're going to see several tall, straight palm trees. Those are sable palms. That's the state tree of Florida. But in the early 1700s, a group of migrant cattle herders out of the Carolinas came to Florida. They would take the heart of that palm with some salt pork and water, boil it up, and call it swamp cabbage. The other name for that palm tree is the cabbage palm. That same group of people would control their cattle herds with their large bull lips. Those snaps of their lips could be heard almost a mile away. It also made a cracking sound. The Spanish named them craqueros or crackers. We're going to take another step in time. It's now 1821. Florida has just been acquired by the United States from Spain, just in time for the yellow fever epidemic to hit the area. But it was also a time in our city's history when many non-Catholics were moving into St. Augustine. They were called Protestants or Huguenots. For those 2 reasons, the city of St. Augustine had to build a second cemetery in town. That is the Huguenot cemetery on your right-hand side. The only other cemetery in town was the Tolomato cemetery, but that was for Catholics only. Now, because of the great amount of deaths from yellow fever, many of the graves in the Huguenot cemetery are mass graves, some holding as many as 25 bodies of witnesses. The old gray wooden structure in front of us, that's the old drugstore. That was established in 1886 by T.W. Speisiger. He was a druggist out of the Carolinas. His family owned and ran that business until 1960. Many of his original remedies were nothing more than grain alcohol, water, and opium. They didn't cure a thing, folks, but they certainly made you very happy. Inside the drugstore is Potter's Wax Museum. Potter's was established in 1949 at 1 King Street down by the bay in St. Augustine. It's the first wax museum in the United States, but back then it was also the second largest in the world. next to Madame Tussauds of France. Now the cemetery coming up in front of us, that is the Tolomano Cemetery. That's the Catholic Cemetery. Now, inside Potters, we have 160 figures. They all have their written history right next to them. Some of them are today's pop icons. You show the folks inside Potters your trolley tickets. They will discount their tickets by 30%. Please remain seated until the trolley comes to a complete stop. Exiting backwards on ladder style, holding the handles in uprights. I'll wait for my bell. This is stop number 3, Potters Wax Museum. Potters is loaded with history, folks.
Yeah. No.
Thank you, Cleve. Here we go, folks. Please keep all personal belongings, body parts inside the trolley at all times. At the end of the street on the left-hand side, you're going to see 2 tall stone pillars. Those are the city gates. Those gates are built in 1808. The original gates are made out of palm log, but either way, both says the gates are closed every evening at dusk. Here you are outside. After the gates are closed, you stayed outside all night long with the mosquitoes, the gators, and the snakes, and occasionally an unruly native. Now in 1908, the city of St. Augustine decided that the gates must come down, for they were an eyesore. The daughters of the American Revolution stepped in to fight. They staged a sit-in at the gates dressed in funeral garb. Serve heed to all who would listen. The daughters of the American Revolution won the day. The city gates still stand. This is also the north end of St. George Street, our very own historic pedestrian mall, loaded with shops and restaurants as well as historic sites. Just like the oldest schoolhouse and St. Photios Greek Orthodox Shrine. Please remain seated until the trolley comes to a complete stop. Exiting backwards to the ladder style, holding the handles in upright. Oh, wait for my bell. This is stop number 4, the city gate at St. George. Once again, exit only to your right. And get traffic lanes on our left. Hello, how are you this afternoon? A little misted, yes, we are all a little misted.
Oh, we got sharks on board. Uh-oh.
You got sharks on board?
Shark
Uh-oh.
Week.
Uh-oh. Is it? No, that comes later in the... They come like in August.
But he's got it.
But you got it.
He's got it. Shark Week on
Don't think on it. Old Town Trolleys.
He's a good
What are
boy.
you doing all the way back there?
I know. She's coming. Don't worry.
I know.
She's
Here you
coming.
go.
She loves me
Don't
so
put it
much
too hot,
today.
Kayla. Too hot, too
I'm
hot.
upset that she doesn't have her hat on. I feel like she's going to burn.
I know.
Oh,
I know.
yeah. I think she's already burned.
You're already fried?
Probably.
No, guys.
Hey, we do. It's true.
See you guys later. Here we go. Thanks,
Bye,
ladies.
Bye, Sharky.
Here we go. Please keep all personal belongings, body parts, and time to trolley at all times. Don't forget to keep those personal conversations down to a whisper. We're about to go by one of the newest attractions in St. Augustine. That is the Pirate and Treasure Museum. Over 800 artifacts and treasures on display. The largest collection of its kind in the world. They have an interactive area. You can even fire a cannon, but they also have one of only 3 remaining true Jolly Roger flags. Now, just past the Pirate Treasure Museum, you're going to see a small hut. It'll have a thatched roof. That is the entrance to the Colonial Quarter. The Colonial Quarter is a 2-acre interactive history site. It'll take you through about 300 years of St. Augustine, Florida history. On the back side of the quarter, they also have an authentic Spanish and British colony. Please remain seated until the trolley comes to a complete stop. Exiting backwards on ladder style, holding the hands open upright, wait for my bell. Distance stop. Number 5, this is the Colonial Quarter. It's also a stop to the fort directly across the street. Our fort is now open 7 days a week. off and away safely. Here we go, folks. Please keep all pushing along the button, but it's the Charlie at all times. Now take a look to your left. You're going to see our port, the Castillo de San Marcos. But they look directly across the bay. The body of land is Anastasia Island. That's where all the coquina for our port. And the original Spanish homes in St. Augustine, that's where it was quarried. Coquina is a very unusual stone. Once quarried, it must sit in a hot Florida sun for 1 to 3 years just to dry and harden. Our next stop is the Big Spot. Loaded with restaurants and great views of our bay. We have Harry's, we have Meehan, we also have the TV Martini Bar. Please remain seated until the Charlie comes to a complete stop. Exiting backwards on ladder style, holding the handrails and upright. I'll wait for my bell. This is stop number 6, the Bayfront. Once again, exit only to your right. Okay, just a handful on. Here we go, folks. Welcome aboard. Please keep all personal belongings to the body parts and talk to Charlie at all times. Please keep those personal conversations down to a whisper. As we come up High Florida Street, you're going to notice that it's